Okay, John. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only John King.
Okay, well, on a Fear for America's Future bender one evening,
Yes.
it was about 2 weeks ago, I was faced with what I saw as a horror of either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton being president. And I started to look for other options, and I ended up finding this guy, Andrew Basiago. And Andrew is a different sort of cat. He claims to have been, as a young man, enlisted in a thing called Project Pegasus, where he was sent into the future and into the past.
I was heard about Project Pegasus. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you've been in the past before.
Like Art Bell.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Anyway, so this guy, I was reading through his 100 proposals. And on top of the time travel stuff, he believes in ETs, that they gave us the atom bomb, that Bill Clinton and George Bush both traveled into the future and saw their own presidencies. Anyway, this guy is for quantum truth and is currently running to be president. But one of the things on his list is he wants to disclose the existence of Sasquatch to everybody. And in his 100 proposals, which I'll post online here in a second, he says, I'm only the second presidential candidate to come out in affirming the existence of Sasquatch. And I thought to myself, well, who the heck is the first one? I did a little bit of research, and the first president to talk about something like Sasquatch is Theodore Roosevelt. And Theodore Roosevelt has a story about Sasquatch from, believe it or not, the Bitterroot Valley.
Wow. So
we'll get to that in a second. But first, I want you to listen to Andy. This is Andy Bas. I think you say his name is Basiago or Basiago.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, here you can get a taste of what he sounds like.
Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy. Turn your radio up really loud.
But I thought that I would just establish the fact that Mars is an inhabited planet, and we now have not just substantial evidence of that, but I think evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And so I just thought I'd march through and sort of summarize what we found. There are a number, for example, of photographs of humanoids that have been derived from NASA's photographs and the photographs of the European Space Agency that we haven't even published yet. Just this last week, we found an image of a Martian carving a rock with a handsaw. Okay, so we've not only made the linkage between the humanoids that live primarily underground on Mars and the overwhelming artwork that we see that litters the entire surface of the red planet, but we have now identified that the humanoids on Mars are in fact the makers of the carved statuary, which is so ubiquitous on the red planet. A little bit about my background. I was one of America's early time-space explorers. Officially speaking, it was from 1969 to 72 that I served in DARPA's Project Pegasus, although the first time I teleported on behalf of the U.S. government was during the 1967-68 time frame, and we know that dating is reliable because when we teleported to Santa Fe, my father and I, and then drove over to meet with Dr. Harold M. Agnew, when he was then director of the W Division, the Weapons Division, at the Los Alamos National Labs. There was a discussion between my dad and Dr. Agnew, and Dr. Agnew looked over at me and said, "How old?" And my dad and I answered simultaneously, 6. So we know that meeting with Agnew took place between September of 1967 and September of 1968. I was born in September of 61. And that's also a means that we can use historically to establish that physical teleportation via vortal tunnels propagated by Tesla energetic arrays was already a technical proficiency that had been accomplished by the U.S. Department of Defense by the 1967-68 timeframe. Officially, I was placed in Pegasus in the fall of 1969 as a 3rd grader and involved primarily in teleporting back and forth between New Jersey and New Mexico and some future locations, because of course to teleport back you need team members in the future to send you back to the present.
It makes sense.
Well, you got 1967, 68. I'm thinking LSD. I'm thinking hash. I'm thinking Haight-Ashbury. I'm thinking.
All right. So that's now.
I'm thinking groovy, man.
That's now. This is only the most recent presidential candidate to believe in Sasquatch.
Okay.
But I have in studio Greg Sandberg, who's been on before. We talked with him about all of the mountain men.
You're about to destroy this poor man's reputation.
Well, He may have already done that himself. I don't know. He's written a book called Paranormal Montana.
Oh, okay. There you go.
And as well as the Mountain Men stories we've discussed in the past. But anyway, this in this book, I understand you have brought up some of the story that Roosevelt talks about in his book, The Wilderness Hunter.
Yes, we sure did, John. Thank you very much for having me on today. And this is an actual story that comes to us from our 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt. He wrote about it in his 1892 book. He wrote 35 books during his lifetime. And a lot of people don't know it, but Teddy Roosevelt used to live in the Montana-Wyoming area from about 1884 to around 1887, owned some ranch land around here, and talked to a lot of people. And he found out this story from a old trapper named Bowman. And it's often called the Bowman story or Bowman sighting.
Okay, we're gonna hold that for just a minute because I know you're sitting on the edge of your seat right now. I am as well, but I'm standing up.
Yeah.
So figure that one out.
Well, you're standing up just like Sasquatch.
We're going to come right back. Stay with us. All three lines open. Love to hear from you guys. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back on Talkback. That's John King over there. We're finally indulging John in his Bigfoot story. Okay, Greg Strandberg, the author of several books, because we've had him on the show before, and he acknowledged and confirmed your report, John, about the whole Bigfoot thing with Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah, well, Theodore Roosevelt is actually confirming this Bauman guy's story in his book. But let's go ahead and get the story in the interim while you're telling the story here, Greg. Now, I'll come out here as a little bit of a crazy guy, maybe. But of all the monster stories, the ones I'm most likely to believe in are the cryptid ones. I like the idea that Bigfoot could exist, and I really like the idea that there's giant aquatic monsters like Nessie and the Flathead Lake Monster. Those sort of things, like, they really get me going. As a kid, I wanted to be a dinosaur hunter. That's how much into it I was. So, if you're a true believer, if you've seen a Bigfoot, please give us a call, 721-1290. We know the president has confirmed that they lived in the Bitterroot Valley, at least at the turn of the century.
Theodore Roosevelt.
All right, let's go, Greg.
Yeah, I've got about 15 Montana Bigfoot stories in my new book and about 4 chapters on the Flathead Lake Monster as well. But the 1892 Bowman incident involves an area. I went ahead and I wrote it down for people. It's in the mountains dividing the forks of the Salmon from the head of the Wisdom River. So it's going to be around the current town of Wisdom, around that particular area. And it happened in 1892 when we had a couple fur trappers. Well, 1892. It probably happened in the 1880s. A couple fur trappers decided to go up into this area. They had 2 horses on them. It was a man named Bauman and his partner. We don't know his name. And they have to go about 4 miles up into this clearing in the woods. And they find a really good spot, and they're going to make some camp. And they decide that, hey, we got a couple hours of daylight left. Why don't we go out and lay out some traps, just kind of scout the area. They do that. It's getting towards sunset. So they come back, and they find that their camp has totally been ransacked. All of their bags have been emptied out, the possessions strewn about, their lean-to has been knocked over. It's just very, very strange. So the men look around, and they find that, yes, there are indeed some footprints. Well, it looks to them like a bear, but then the one other partner says, hey, Bauman, come look at this. It looks like this bear is walking on 2 feet, the way the footprints are. So the men are a little uneasy, but they go ahead and they make camp, and they bed down for the night. Around midnight, they're woken by some strange sounds. Bowman wakes up right outside the lean-to there where they're sleeping. He sees some kind of a figure outlined in the dark, manages to pick up his rifle, gets a shot off, and they hear something rush away in the bushes. They don't know what it is. So the next day comes along. It's their first full day. They decide, listen, there's some strange things here, but we got a job to do. We're rough trappers, mountain men. We can handle this. They both set off in their separate directions, lay out their traps, catch some beaver, do some skinning, come back around nightfall. Again, the whole camp has been ransacked. The possessions are scattered about. The lean-to is knocked over. They see the same strange footprints. They don't know what's going on.
Somebody drank all the beer. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So they decide that they're going to gather up as much wood as they can and build just a huge bonfire. And if anything's coming, they're going to see it. They decide to, they get this raging inferno going. They decide to take shifts. One of them sleeping, one of them is keeping watch. Around midnight, something comes up on this slope on the opposite side, and they can see it outlined in the faint glimmer of the firelight. Some kind of a weird figure, looks kind of like a bear. They don't do anything. It stays up there for about an hour and then goes ahead and leaves after making some shrieks and moans and other god-awful sounds. So It's the next day. The men are thinking, listen, we got to get out of this place. There's some strange stuff here. The problem is they still got a couple traps laying over yonder near some ponds that they're not going to leave that good equipment up there, let alone the beaver that might be sitting in them. So Bowman says, listen, I'll go and I'll get those traps. You go ahead and pick up camp, and I'll be back around lunchtime. We'll get out of here. Well, Bowman goes out, and being the good trapper that he is, he goes ahead and gets those traps, skins the beavers that are there, and does a little bit of other things. Not until close to sunset that he manages to get back to camp. And today, wow, everything is fine. The lean-to is sitting there. There's still little blue wisps of smoke coming up. The fire is okay. But then he notices over on the ground, there's some feet laying there like his partner is sleeping or something. So he heads over, and he sees that his partner isn't sleeping, but his partner is dead, his body laying all askew, kind of broken, boned and whatnot. And on the neck, there is some fang marks, like something grabbed him and bit into his throat or something like that. And then afterward, it looks like the body has been rolled over, like some creature is having a heck of a good time. Bowman decides right then and there that he's just going to drop everything and gets out of there, goes back downhill, and gets on the horses and leaves. And that's the story.
And of course, in the original, the Wilderness Hunter rendition, the one that Teddy Roosevelt actually penned, he doesn't come out and say, this is Bigfoot, this is Sasquatch. That's something, right, that was added later.
Yeah, it's actually kind of referred to as a goblin tale, is what they say, is what it's referred to there. And
Well, because there was no such thing as Bigfoot or Sasquatch back then. Is that right?
They didn't
Says
know
you.
anything about that.
Okay.
There's always been Bigfoot.
But they hadn't identified it as Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever they want to call it.
So the story...
Now, the abominable snowman they may have heard of.
Now, this is the way that Teddy Roosevelt introduces. This is his actual writing from the book.
Okay.
He says, quote, "Frontiersmen are not, as a rule, apt to be very superstitious. They lead lives too hard and practical, and some have too little imagination in things spiritual or supernatural. I have heard but few ghost stories while living in the frontier, and those few were of a perfectly commonplace and conventional type. But I once listened to a goblin story, which rather impressed me." And then he goes on to tell the tale that you just heard from
And
Brent.
we know from the Teddy Roosevelt's account that these two trappers knew full well that a trapper the previous season had been ripped apart by wild animals in that exact same canyon area they walked up into.
All right, so if someone's listening to this story, even though it's Teddy Roosevelt, they're very skeptical. In your book, maybe one more quick story about Sasquatch. You said you have like 50 tales?
Oh, we have about 15 of them, all going all the way up into the 2000s around Helena.
What do you think has the most credentials of the Montana Sasquatch tales?
Well, there's a couple that were written by some reporters when they were out doing some stuff in the woods around Kalispell in the 1960s, and there's a pretty convincing tale of a man who spotted something while he was out, and he managed to have a hunting rifle on him, too, while looking for this old hermit's house, and he ran across some kind of creature that was just 100 yards away from him or less, and across some trees behind a few stumps, and saw him quite clearly. Saw the creature, raised his gun up, and then the creature made some kind of awful sound, and it was clear that the guy did not want to shoot at this for some reason, is what he thought. And this was by a reporter up in Kalispell area. I can't remember his name right now, but it's in my book, and I thought that one was pretty plausible because many of these are in the files at the Historical Society, or they're documented online by the Bigfoot reporting agencies. And Montana actually has a Bigfoot convention that happens around Whitefish, I believe.
Wait, there's Bigfoot reporting agencies?
Yeah, there's an actual website where you go, and if you see a sighting in Montana or anywhere else in this area, you can go ahead and report it, and they will put it up on the internet. And that's where I get many of my cases. For instance, the rattlesnake in 1977, there was a young girl riding her horse in the rattlesnake wilderness that supposedly saw some kind of Bigfoot-like creature. And that's just one sighting of many that are documented.
Okay, now we're getting really close to home. You said this one is in the rattlesnake?
Yeah, rattlesnake area in 1977, I believe.
Are there any, the last question before we let you go, any Missoula Sasquatch stories besides this rattlesnake one?
Oh, not in the city limits, except for maybe on some Maggot Festival type of activities.
Greg, thank you so much for your time and the stories.
Thank you so much
It's
for
always
having
a
me.
pleasure. And what's the name of your book?
Paranormal Montana.
And where do we get it?
You can get that on Amazon or any other online retailers.
Good deal. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right.
Obviously, no true believers. Didn't get a single call. No one's seen a Bigfoot.
I don't know.
I haven't either, so
Yeah.
join the crowd.
I have little feet. Does that count? No. Anyway.
Littlefoot, that's from the Land Before Time.
Well, no, but that's also a band, Little Feet. But anyway, we're moving right along. We'll be right back with open phones in a moment. Welcome back. This is Talk Back. Okay, we got folks waiting to visit with us here in just a second. But first, Talkback brought to you this morning by Bullseye Wear. They offer some of the lowest prices in town on contact lenses. See Lynette at 2910 South Reserve. Nissan and Hyundai of Missoula under new management, offering rebates, discounts, and 0% financing on a huge selection of vehicles. And also Selway Armory on Stockyard Road. More guns and ammo than anybody in Missoula. The best prices in Montana. Montana's premier firearms dealer. Okay, you were worried that nobody wanted to call and share a Bigfoot story.
Well, luckily, we've got our full lines.
Wrong! Let's get to the phone. Dale, thanks for holding. You're up first. Hi, what's on your mind? Hello,
Sorry,
Dale.
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Dale, you are Dale. Go for it.
Yeah, well, this isn't exactly a Bigfoot story, but it is something that I couldn't identify that I saw in the woods.
Okay.
I was at Hemlock Lake up in the Mission Mountains previously before the burn had happened, and I was enjoying my morning coffee out there on this little peninsula and heard this god-awful crashing. It sounded like a bus being slammed against the side of the cliff, pretty far away, like across the valley and up the side of the draw where the lake is sitting. And this went on very like clockwork, about every 12 minutes, and I really couldn't figure out what it was. But then I saw this movement out of the corner of my eye about halfway around the lake. And before I could turn my head, this thing had gone from tree to tree right around behind me. And it had covered probably about 200 yards in the time that it took me to turn my head.
Wait,
Just
it was
incredibly
swinging?
fast.
Was it swinging from the trees?
Or
Or flying between the trees?
It was flying and grabbing hold of the trees. I could hear the bark peeling off as its claws hit the trees. And it landed behind me in this tree, and it turned around and looked at me and then flew down the side of the mountain. Now, this thing had, I hesitate to say it had wings, but it sounded kind of like a leather jacket on a motorcycle. You know, if you have a long leather trench coat, if it's flying by you real fast, it kind of sounded like that. And it was really slick looking, and it had really big eyes. And
Well, did it
quite
look like
large
a
teeth.
did it look like a bat or a bird or what?
Kind of bat-ish, but I had no idea what it was. But here's the thing, though, is that I think I know what the crashing sound was. I'm pretty sure that they were doll sheep slamming their heads together. And that sound probably spooked this thing out of the forest. And I keep trying to convince myself that it was a marten, you know, because martens can move pretty fast through the trees. And when they're wet, if they've been in the water, they'll look kind of slick, and their eyes will look bigger. But
Well, how big was this thing?
it's about the size of a large marten.
Okay. So your
So-
Martin idea makes it kind of work together, but the
Yeah, but it still
Why?
freaks me out every time I think about it, because at the time, it really didn't look like anything I'd ever seen. It looked like a demon.
wow.
Very
Well, hey,
cool.
thanks for the story.
All right.
Thanks,
We'll
Dale.
talk to you later.
I'm not
Bye.
I'm not sleeping tonight. Richard, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Morning, everybody.
Hi.
Just a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, I guess, that I'll make it quick, but I find it funny that it's like, you know, when you see everybody that they're able to take photos out in the wildlife, and we see these beautiful pictures of every animal, but even with cell phones and that, but nobody can ever come up with a clear picture of a UFO or a Bigfoot. They're always blurry, like, what, is it just because is Bigfoot just automatically make your camera
Well,
blurry?
let's put it this way. If you are holding a cell phone and you're trying to take a picture of Bigfoot, don't you think you're going to be shaking like a leaf?
No, but do you know what I mean, Peter?
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
saying
Well,
that
there are-
nobody ever seems to, you know, I mean, they put cameras on trees and take pictures of wildlife and
I wanna
everything
see-
else,
I wanna
but
see a
nobody
Bigfoot-
can ever seem to.
I want to see a Bigfoot selfie.
There is a famous Bigfoot
There
video.
you go.
Yeah, yeah.
And one more quick thing,
Okay.
if you don't mind. I was going to say, I noticed that yes, they're starting their the bridge over the top, our reserve in 93 there,
Right.
and it's like I find it funny. You know, I've lived here for 47 years, and it's like I've seen people ever cross that street there. Then say that Malfunction Junction or Mullen and Reserve trying to get to Walmart. There's more people that cross those things during the fair and everything else in the day than ever cross out there. But that's just my opinion.
It'll be a new trend. Thanks for the call. A lot of people are saying it's just an anti. What do they call the big rigs coming through? Yeah.
Although I have to confess, I probably will use the bridge to bike to work.
Oh.
It makes sense for me.
Okay, so it's an anti-megaload bridge is basically what.
Well, I'll be the megaload on the bridge. How's that?
Whatever you say. All right, you say that, I won't. Jeff, good morning. Thanks for holding. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi. This is like May of 1986. I was in high school and we were having a keg, so take that with a grain of salt. But the cops came. We all ran. There was a bunch of us there.
What are you talking, Patty Canyon?
No, this is outside of Whitefish, about 15 miles near Tally Lake.
Okay, gotcha.
Everybody took off running because the cops came. And I was pretty intoxicated. I was with a girl, and most everybody was in front of us, and we were running across this swamp, and I was, walking. I was walking, and I lost one of my shoes in the mud, and so I'm like digging around in the mud trying to get my shoe, and it was a full moon, and there's all this crashing going on. Before the swamp, there's a line of trees, and from out of the trees, running between us and another group of people, was this unidentifiable beast on two legs. That we all of us really could only explain as Bigfoot. So,
how big was it?
It ran probably within 15 feet of me and this girl that were there, and probably within 30 to 40 or 30 to 50 feet from the other group of people that were on the side of the hill. And
how
it
tall?
was probably, I would say, it was probably like 7 feet tall.
Wow.
So
and it was a big hairy thing.
How many people were there to witness this?
There was myself and this girl that was walking with me, and then on the other side of the hill there was probably 15 people.
And they all saw?
Yeah, we all saw it. In fact, the other at Christmas, I was at a Christmas party, and a girl I hadn't seen since high school was like, "Remember that?" And we were all talking about it, and I was like, "Yeah, it was nuts."
Did the designated drivers also attest to seeing the Bigfoot?
Well, I can't say that there were any designated drivers. I ended up at the cop shop that night, and got busted for a minor in possession. But
did you give your report to the police? And is there an official record somewhere?
No, they were referring to me as Rambo because I was wearing a camo and I was all muddy. So.
All right. Hey, thanks for the call, man. It was great.
Awesome.
Good story. Thanks for the call. All right, 721-1290 is our number.
Weird creatures.
Yes.
The full moon really completed that story. I think it made it full circle.
Yes,
if you will.
Yes, we'll be right back after this important time out. Stay with us. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309. John King's over there. Actually, we have our boss is joining us here at the studio. He's trying to help us out with some lighting stuff.
They took elephants out of the circus. They did this really cool balancing act. We took them over the weekend to watch. Right. But watching my boss stand on that swivel chair and try to take the light down was almost as impressive.
He's amazing. Now, do you want to play this Occidental College thing, or what did you want to do?
Well, I have one more comment on Facebook real quick. So
this
is from Mitchell. He says, I know a couple of people that have seen Bigfoots, or big feet, in our area. My dad called the bear researchers, that'd be the Craigheads, in the early 80s, and he asked them about Bigfoot. They said, quote, "We know something is out there, but we don't know what it is."
Okay, there you go. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309. Kind of a strange Monday. Alan is the voice of reason. Alan, good morning, sir.
Good morning. I was just calling in to say if you want to read a great Bigfoot story.
Okay.
It's called Monster.
Yeah.
It's written by Frank Peretti,
Frank Peretti. Yes, right.
and it is a terrific story. I read it. It was just fascinating. I think everybody that wants to believe in Bigfoot would really get a chuckle out of reading it. It's just a terrific story.
All right, Alan. Thanks for the tip.
You bet.
Appreciate it, buddy. All right. Now the lines are full again. Rex, hi. You're on Talkback.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Good. Hey, 2010, I graduated high school, and I got to go on a pike fishing trip up in the Northwest Territories, and they fly you in on a float plane and drop you off at a cabin. They give you a boat, and one's a motorboat, and one's like a little canoe that you can tow behind to access like smaller tributaries that feed the lakes.
Okay.
And I went up a ways away from our cabin.
Now, were you alone?
No, I was with my friend
Okay.
from town too, but
Okay.
we're the same age. We were both like 18, and we dumped the motorboat and we canoe into this like slow tributary that fed the lake, and we found a trapper cabin. And I'm messing around looking at all this stuff in the trapper cabin, and it was abandoned. It was like torn up, and bears and stuff had been in there. And we there was a trail connecting the two. There's a trail coming into the cabin. And I'm hiking. I hiked up in there, and there was a second trapper cabin. And right when I'm coming around the corner, I see a bear, and I'm positive it was a bear because it was like on all fours, messing around like a bear. But then I think it smelled me because it didn't see me first. It stands up, and it was like a muscular. It looked like a DN for the Grizz. He was probably 6'8", and probably only like a bear. If you got a 7-foot bear, you're looking at probably 300. Some pounds easy.
At least.
300, yeah, almost 400 pounds. This thing was maybe 280. And, like, not very much fur, like thin fur. Like, you could see the skin. And it like, looks at me like a guy. Like, if you were to, like, surprise a guy, it looks at me and takes off in, like, the most athletic, two-legged run you'd ever see, like, out of an animal. Like, it was hurdling logs and, like, jumping and dodging things as it ran up the hill, and it never went back on all fours again.
Okay, wait, real quick. Why are you so sure it's a bear? I mean, did its face look like a bear's?
Yeah, it had like a it had a bear face, but it almost looked more like a dog face. I mean, it had no tail, but like
you found Anubis. You found Anubis in Canada.
What is it?
Anubis, the dog-headed god from Egypt.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. It was like it wasn't like furry, round-faced bear. It was like streamlined because it had no fur on it. It was the face of the face.
It had no fur on it.
It had gross black. It was like a hairy guy, like gross. Like you go into a public pool and you see a guy's back. It's like coarse, stiff.
Right.
Coarse, stiff, weird black hair that you can see all the skin, but it was coated in hair.
Huh.
So not
was the hair straight or curly?
Straight.
All over.
Like pig hair.
Wow.
Like if like a hairy pig is what it was.
Now you said you were so sure this was a bear. Do you think maybe you just justified because you saw something you can't explain?
I'm totally rationalizing that it's a bear because I saw 20 other bears that day in the Northwest Territories.
How many naked-faced bears have you seen in your life that ran on 2 feet and hurdled logs?
Do me a favor and Google hairless bear.
Hairless bear.
Okay,
exactly
we'll do it.
They get like mange.
Okay.
But I mean, the thing that freaked me out was his athleticism.
Yeah, it was like running on 2 legs. That's
my
weird.
goodness, this hairless bear thing is so frightening.
Yeah. No, you're not going to see a scarier thing today than that hairless bear.
Wow.
And it does look like a dog's face. People, you need to go do this. Look up hairless bear on the internet.
All right, Rex.
Maybe be careful with the search engine you use, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
All
that's
right.
exactly what I saw, except it was running and like athletic.
Wow.
All right. Thanks for the call, Rex.
All right.
For scaring the hooey out of us. Okay, we're up against a break. Todd, if you'll hang on, I want to give you plenty of time to tell your story. So hang on. We have 2 lines open, 721-1290. I'm going to call Art Bell right now. We'll be right back. Oh, this song makes me want to squeeze somebody. I don't know.
Stop looking at me. You know me.
I know. All right. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, you're thinking about bears and, Bigfoot and big feet and whatever.
Yeah, I don't know which story was the scariest to you so far. Which one would most unnerve you?
The one about Hillary. Just kidding.
They've all been really good. The flying bat monkey thing.
Yeah. The flying martin.
He justifies it as a martin.
Yeah.
The hairless bear. By the way, that hairless bear, if I saw that thing standing up on 2 feet, I would think I saw a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
That's pretty frightening stuff.
So let's get Todd on the line. He's been waiting the longest. Todd, thanks for holding. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, can you hear me okay? I'm in my car.
Go for it, man. You're up.
Okay. Just outside of Florence, last year, my buddy Bill said he and his son were walking up towards the woods area outside west of Florence, and they came upon, in the snow, tracks. Well, this is a bear track. Well, he said he started looking at it, and there was 2 sets, and they were both bipeds. In other words, whoever it was, or whatever it was on 2 legs. So he said he's walking along, and he noticed that he's no way can he stretch his legs out and duplicate the stride of whatever this was. So he gets his framing hammer out, because he was carrying it, and placed it next to one of the tracks and took a photo of it. And I said, "You got a photo of this thing?" He goes, "Yeah, I got a bunch of photos in my cell phone." I'm looking at this thing, and you can see the damn toes in the snow. So he follows along a little bit further, and he comes to one of those little rock stone fences that get people pile up from prehistoric Lake Missoula. And he says this thing was about 6 feet wide and about 5 feet tall, just a bunch of them. Both the tracks stopped at the edge of the fence and began again on the other side of the little rock fence. He says there's no way anybody human could have leaped over this thing. He says, "Oh, geez, you really got me." "Oh, yeah, right." So anyhow, I just thought I'd give you a quick call. This is in Florence, man.
And this was a couple of years ago, you said?
Last winter.
Oh, wait, okay. You have photos on a phone of a Bigfoot track in Florence. Can you send them to me?
Say again, I can barely hear you.
Can you email me the photo of this framing hammer next to a Bigfoot mark in Florence?
Yeah, we can do that. Hey, give me a call back, because I've got nothing to write on it.
Well,
put him on hold. Put him on hold.
I'll put you on hold. John's going to get your number, okay?
The world needs to know.
Hang on the phone just a second. All right, there we go. Okay, so that means that Mike, the Trapper Mike, I'm glad you called. What's on your mind?
Well, being a trapper, I look at every track I see, and all trappers do. So if you want to know what's in the woods, ask a trapper, because they're always looking at the ground.
Right.
But I will tell you a couple of stories that were a little amusing. Well, by the way, the one up to our lip, that one they described sounds suspiciously like the black-headed cootie up there by Libby. That animal is the black-headed cootie. You got to watch out for that guy.
The black-headed cootie.
Yeah, well, someday I'll tell you the rest of the story.
Okay.
I may let you read the rest of the story. I'll put it that way.
All right.
Anyway, and the one that's seen of Tally Lake, that was a Minnesota brush ape, because there are a lot of people from Minnesota that live in that country, and they're all brush apes. So, but these are actually true stories. And one time, this was up on Mill Creek out of Livingston, out of Yellowstone. I'm back there 10 miles, killed a bighorn ram, and a big rainstorm's coming. So I dive down the brush and to eat dinner, and it starts. That spruce tree I'm sleeping under gets to leaking. About 3 a.m. Something wakes me up, and what the devil is this? And I look up, and there that old cow moose has her nose about 6 inches from mine. I pulled my head back under her sleeping bag and said, "Enough of this noise. I ain't talking to you today."
So a cow moose got up close and personal.
Yeah, well, it also helps you don't want to sleep in a moose trail, too.
Yeah, and not...
And the other one, this is another one. This is over there in the Gallatin. I'm coming out. I got to meet some guys. I got to go to work in the morning. So I'm camped up on a steep side hill. I found the only flat place I could find to keep from rolling down the hillside. I'm ahead of sprinting in a trail, but this is like 12 at night. Well, some guy's riding out there on a horse, and he had the world's best trail horse, because I hear thump, thump, thump. And the next thing, I'm nose to nose with this horse. And I come out of that sleeping bag, and what the heck is that? And the guy, all he could say is, blankety blank bear. Wish I had a gun, blankety blank bear. It was a bright, full moonlight night, and it was absolutely hilarious.
Wow.
Good thing he didn't have a gun. But if you want to get out of a sleeping bag, hurry. Be camped out there and up above wherever you're at. This is clear up in Hellroaring Creek in the Galton. Have a dadgum mouse get in your sleeping bag. That'll get you out quicker than anything. I know.
Hey, Mike, I got to ask you before we let you go. As a trapper who's been trapping in Montana for a long time,
Yeah.
do you believe in Bigfoot?
Absolutely not, because I used to run a trap line up through Tally Lake. I ran a trap line up through the North Fork of the Flathead, cleared the Canadian border. Also, that country. I've had thousands of traps in these areas. So, no, but there is one thing that I find really amusing, and that has to do with the wolverine. Apparently, they do not like the smell of coyote lure, because I have never, ever caught a wolverine and only one lynx in a coyote set. It is very rare to catch these, and this deal on the wolverine here, it's not the snowbanks that's disappearing, it's the loss of habitat, because if the snowbanks were the key factor, how did Michigan get known as a wolverine state? Because they did not have snowbanks that lasted clear into July.
All right.
All right, I'll let you go.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Emmett, we're going to get you on in a moment. 1 minute timeout. Can we really do the whole hour on Bigfoot here? Seriously? 721-1290?
Now, Peter, you've been outside before.
Yes, I have. I live in Montana. I have been outside.
Have you ever had any paranormal Montana experiences?
Actually, I'll explain when we come back. Stay with us. Okay, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309, or you can make your comments on our Facebook page. Okay, let's get Emmett on the line. Emmett, you've been waiting the longest. Go ahead, sir. What's up?
Oh, thanks for taking my call. It's very fascinating. Well, I have never seen any of these creatures myself. I'm not often in the outdoors, but I've always believed in Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, the Loch Ness Monster, and some of these other odd creatures, because I think the Bigfoot mystery is simply it's probably an old Neanderthal. They're very rare, very territorial, probably live a long time. The Loch Ness Monster, the Flathead Lake Monster, is probably an old Brachiosaurus, from the dinosaur era that probably has lived for who knows how long. These other creatures, have you ever, do you have Charter? I have a channel called Destination America, and sometimes it has Monsters and Mysteries in America, where they often document some of these strange creatures, especially way, way down south. I think they're rare creatures like half bat, half human type people, but they're very territorial and they'll attack humans. But there's just too many of these type of accounts to dismiss as, people making hoaxes or something like this. And these animals want to be left alone, I think. Some of it might even be supernatural. I don't know. But, I am a believer myself, in this kind of thing.
Well, I think when you talk about in the Deep South, that very reclusive creature is called a Republican.
I love that.
All right. Thanks, Emmett.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
I said I think he's talking about chupacabra.
Yeah. Chupacabra. Okay. So it's nothing. Like Bob's on the line. Bob, good morning. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
Good. What's up?
Good. I just, I don't know if this truly would qualify as a Bigfoot story, but it's something that happened that was rather different out in the woods. I was about 40 years old. You talked about John being old. I'm really old compared to John. But about 40 years ago, I was going out to a logging job that we had down the Skelco Hole, and I always carried my rifle with me during hunting season and this type of thing. Very rarely would I ever go out by myself, but this time I happened to be going to the job, and I was just going ahead and driving down the Skelco Hole River, and I heard an elk up on the ridge, and it was quite deep snow down. It was about 1.5 feet, I'd say, down by the Skelco River, and a real steep, about 1,500 feet up to this sort of elk. So I decided to hike up on the other ridge and try to stay in the timberline and get up there. I got up to the top of the mountain, and I, of course, noticed some real nice Doug fir in there where evidently the moisture settled in where it kind of leveled out. And there was not much snow in there, it was about a foot or so. And I was walking along, and all of a sudden I saw all these feathers on the ground. And I looked up in the fir tree there, and I could see where the branches were broken and that thing, where a bird had been. And they went ahead, and there's scratch marks up there about 10 feet high. And I went ahead and had something at that time that I've never heard before. I have heard it on a couple of Bigfoot programs that sound similar to it, but out in the wild I've never heard it. And it was a severe screech. And every coyote in the country just started howling like you couldn't believe. And all of a sudden I just got a really weird feeling of danger. And so I headed back out. The snow depth out in the flat was about 3 feet at that height, and I just headed down to my car. So I don't know whether it was a Bigfoot, but there was some big tracks, human-like tracks. The snow was falling in on, so I couldn't really tell, but they were long instead, more like a bear and this type of thing.
All right. Well, thanks for the story. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You have a great day. Thanks for calling in.
Wow. 40 minutes ago, I didn't think we were going to get any stories. We filled up the whole time. Now, you said you have a weird story.
Well, it's not a weird story. It's just that I get to work between 3 and 3:30 every morning.
That's pretty weird.
Drive in the middle of the night, basically, from Miller Creek down to here and wherever I'm going. And I look for weird stuff, but I never see anything. I mean, there's a deer every now and then. There's a little raccoon or a fox or something or a skunk or whatever. But I'm looking for an alien spacecraft or something to land in a field. Because 3 in the morning, there's nothing happening, nobody's around, and I just one time, I would like to be the one who said, "You should see what I saw. I've got it." But nothing ever. I'm just the world's most boring. They don't care about me. So there you go.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you did do a story with a video dash cam from a police officer.
Well, that wasn't me though.
Oh, okay.
That was a guy from one of the law enforcement agencies around town who shall remain nameless. But anyway. But that was a real deal.
There's video of this UFO on the website.
Yes, there is.
And Peter actually ran it in the news.
Yeah.
So
you guys have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow for another exciting edition of Strange Radio. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for calling KGVO.